Job costing styles are workflows in Knowify that help users control how much detail they get out of all of their job costing and reporting and how they go about setting up a job. These are only offered in fixed price and fixed price with AIA billing, and they automatically show when the contract style is selected. If selecting Cost Plus, you'll see you're limited to only Advanced, and when selecting Maintenance, since the jobs aren't managed in the contract jobs but actually in service jobs, there's no options. When we select Fixed Price, we can choose between Simple, Advanced, or Professional as our job costing styles. In Simple, we start by creating a contract, and when it's active, we can track all of the costs of the job, but only against a single phase. In Advanced, you have the ability to create the contract first as well, but it'll generate a phase automatically for each line of the contract. And in Professional, you'll use Knowify's Budget, Bid, Track, and Invoice workflow, where you start by generating a budget, use the budget to generate a contract, which you bid to the customer, then track all of your actual costs against the budgeted costs, and eventually invoice for the work completed to date. We'll start by reviewing how to set up and track a job using the simple job costing style. When you initially save the job, you'll be pulled to the page where you create the proposal or contract for this project. You can start by adding line items to the contract, and if necessary, using the breakdown or bill of materials to summarize what goes into each line item and more easily come up with the best price to offer the client on this. This can be separated into materials and labor if needed, and this information can be used later on to generate a budget for the job. Even though this job is set to simple and will only track to one phase, you do have the ability to add as many line items as you need. So if you need more detail when sending this to your customer, even though you're only going to track it in a single phase or just a total job value, you can still add multiple phases before making this active. And then when going back to the plan and track section of the job, you'll see that there's just a single phase called labor and materials for you to track your costs. By default, the job won't have any budgets, but if you need to add a budget, you can click the menu in the top right corner to switch this plan to budget mode. Or, if you use the bill of materials, you can click the prompt at the top of the screen and Knowify will automatically generate a budget for you. And when you switch the plan to active, you'll be able to track all of your actual costs against the budgets that were laid out, and if you ever need to adjust these budgets, you again can click the button in the top right corner of the screen and switch the plan to budget mode to make any necessary adjustments. Next, we'll cover the advanced style of job costing. The setup in Advanced is going to look identical to what we did in Simple. The setup in Advanced is going to look identical to what we did when we were setting up a job using the simple job costing style, but when the job is made active, instead of tracking just against a single phase, it'll create a phase for each line item in the contract, and it'll automatically include your bill of materials as the budget, and it'll be able to use any of the descriptions to be included as the work order on this phase. This makes it more powerful to create more detailed bills of materials and descriptions of line items when generating the contract, so you have less work to do when generating budgets and creating project plans. We'll go ahead and make this contract active, and when we go back to plan and track, you'll see that there's multiple phases instead of just the one called labor and materials. By default, there is no budget, but you always have the ability to manually enter one, or you can use the prompt at the top of the screen to automatically pull the information from the contract into your plan and track section so you have values to track against when entering your actual costs. This includes the description of the service automatically generating a work order on each phase for the field staff to see. Last, we'll cover the professional style of job costing. What's different about this right off the bat is instead of starting in the contract section, we'll start in the plan and track section of Knowify, and we'll generate a budget instead of generating contract values for the customer. The budgets can be simple, just as dollar figures, to give us a number to track against later on when we're entering our actual costs. And you can also enter in work order information here as well. This way, we can go through the process of planning out and setting up a project before we go through the process of talking to the customer about how much it's going to cost them. We also can get more detailed when creating budgets, so instead of just entering a dollar figure, we can write in a list of different materials that we believe will need to complete this project and how much we expect them to cost us. This way, we can have more detail when we're tracking our actual versus budgeted costs. Labor can also be itemized in this way. When labor is enabled, instead of a lump sum dollar figure budget, you can enter which role or resource and how many hours will be needed to complete this project. This gives us the ability to not just create a labor budget in a dollar figure, but also have the ability to track actual versus budgeted hours when we're tracking how we're performing on this project. When we're done budgeting and planning this job, we can click Create Proposal at the top of the screen, and you'll see we'll be prompted to use project plan phases. When we click Continue, it'll automatically generate a line item of the contract for each phase that we generated and plan and track, and we can enter in how much we want to mark up our budget to quote a total price. And if you'd just like to use the markup feature as a guide on how much to price, and you'd like to adjust the final value, you can always overwrite the price value that was automatically calculated. You'll also have the ability to pull the information from Plan and Track into the contract on each line item for the bill of materials, so you don't need to rewrite this information if you'd like it displayed to the client underneath each line item. Once this contract's made active, the budget will already be in Plan and Track, so we can start tracking our actual costs against what we planned when setting up the project.